Hey, what's up, guys? We're back. It's the HPR Chronicles with Shakur and Smith. I am Shakur. He is Brother Smith.
What's up?
I'm a filmmaker from Trinidad and Tobago. I love to travel, and I have a passion for history and politics. Chris is a veteran of the Army Reserves that works for the VA, and he also has a passion for history and politics. So together, we came up with the HPR Chronicles with Shakur and Smith. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, as usual, ISENT Group Digital, and everyone else that listens to us on Spotify and iTunes and Buzzsprout and Stitcher and Google. Thank you. Keep listening on all the cell phone apps. It's about truth. We're not pro any race, just pro truth. If the truth offends you, we're sorry, not sorry. That's what we say every week for those that know us. Because even though we're two brothers, blacks, whatever you would call us, brown, from Africa, because black, we're not really black, right?
Yeah, sure.
We're not pro-black, anything. We're just pro-truth, man. We just want to give you guys great information on history, politics, and race. And we're going to cover everything from, countries to political ideas to historical people to everything. I actually want to do one on the history of guns. That's what I want to do. I wrote it down, when gunpowder came into play and how it affected the entire world. I actually want to do that coming up. Look out next Wednesday, because, if you were here last Wednesday, I talked about my trip to Spain. So next Wednesday, I'll be going into the history of Spain and Catalonia and the Catalan language and the people and all that stuff, and, Christopher Columbus and the whole deal. So that'll be next Wednesday. Look out for that. Got to start studying for that episode. But today, Chris B. Smith, Shakur and Smith, is going to be taking the reins on his topic for today, Wednesday, September 18th. Don't forget to check in for the end of the show for Today in History. On this day in history, September 18th, I have some really fun historical facts for you guys that we're going to just shoot out there. Anyway, Smith, I'm ready. What's going on with you before we get into the show?
Just, a lot of personal stuff.
A lot of personal stuff?
Yeah. Family, friends, not sick, or me, myself sick, or work. And not necessarily my main job work, just work in general and people. Yeah. So things are good. Things could always be better. I don't think I'm having the best 2019, but somehow ended out the way, some way in a good, positive. There's positives in there.
Right. Yeah, earlier, guys, he told me he was having a hectic time, and I told him if he needed an ear, we could talk or whatever. He listens to me vent all the time about stuff, personal stuff, relationship stuff, family stuff. He's like my morning vent ear.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But I usually hold my stuff in, unfortunately. It's just a bad habit I got to work on. So anyway.
Right. All right. It's all good.
So sometimes, I bring it out too. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I was looking at, the news today, trying to figure out what I should talk about. And I read about how a judge was blocking the removal of a Confederate statue. Mm-hmm. So it got me wondering about why. So I decided to, do some research and discuss Confederate statues from the past. And with it being, the news, it was something to kind of review.
Yeah.
So in Charlottesville, the Circuit Court Judge Richard Moore ruled that any attempts to remove the Robert E. Lee statue will violate a state law protecting war memorials. Mm-hmm. So, note that the city council for Charlottesville had voted to remove the statue on the grounds that it sends a racist message.
Right.
This is a case where the state law prevented a city from doing something. And that's pretty common because states would control all those cities, but it's just kind of unfair that the city did vote and was choosing to remove it, and then someone decided to, create a civil case or law,
saying that it can't be removed,
that it couldn't be removed, which it got upheld, and it cannot because of the state law. So, but what I will add, there's several. The city council for Charlottesville had voted to remove the statue on the grounds that it sends a like I said, a racist message. This is a case where a state prevents. So the judge, and I quote this, said, "I don't think I can infer that a historical preservation statute," which just meaning in the law part, was intended to be racist, which I understand the basis, his remark. But he said, certainly racism was on their mind, but we should not judge the current law for it. So what I take from that is the people who put the statute in place had racist thoughts.
Of course.
And so, and then I'll go with, people who are defending statues, the monuments and the memorials. They'll try to say that it's about Southern heritage and the history of the South.
But it's something negative, though, if I can interject.
Yeah.
I mean, it's from a negative time. It's from a negative period in American history, and none of that stuff should be commemorated. You never should be commemorating the murder and slaughter and enslavement of any people.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'll be like, them still having Hitler statues in Germany.
Or Christopher Columbus in Spain.
Right. Yeah, but they'll never allow that. But
I know it's different.
That's different because that's where he hails from. So that country is happy about it.
So it's interesting how
and none of the people that they that Columbus and those queens of that, I forgot the term for it, but that sponsored his trips to go to the Western, across the Atlantic and all that. None of those people still live and populate Spain. You know what I'm saying? That was their country. You see what I'm trying to say?
I know.
Yeah, it's completely different. These fools came here. It wasn't their country. They committed. And what I found out the other day was over 90% of the natives and the indigenous people died from
Spain.
No, here in the U.S. and South America and Trinidad, where I'm from, and all these other places. What I found out the other day was 90% of them died because of disease brought by the Europeans. It wasn't even the weapons.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't know it was that high of a percentage.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, I know there was a percentage that would have died from disease.
And they didn't even have that stuff here, but they brought these diseases
with them when they came.
When they came. And like I was telling you, the Europeans learned to be clean and bathe and everything from us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they brought these diseases with them. And that's what caused the murder of most of the people here in the lands that they occupied and colonized.
Yeah.
It's crazy shit, man. Anyway, go ahead.
So,
but you know what I'm saying? That's different.
I do. No, I know because
it's
in Spain and he was a Spaniard, and he helped expand their empire. So
right, exactly.
No,
so
I was just being funny because really, if there was a Columbus statue out here somewhere in America, which I'm pretty sure there might be, somebody could be pissed off and would want that taken down because of the. But so the problem, and this going back to the Confederate statue, the problem is most ignore or defenders of those monuments. The problem is most ignore the reason the South seceded was to preserve and extend the enslavement of blacks.
Right.
The Atlanta, Georgia Peace Monument that was built in 1911 is to honor the peace mission that was led by Southerners to reconcile with the North after the Civil War. That's all nice and, sounds all good. But the problem is the reconciliation it depicts is between white Southerners of the North and white Southerners of the South. So it has, it pretty much excludes African Americans. And, it's this monument does nothing about the experience that with slavery or the struggle for equality and justice that black people have, been dealing with.
Right.
Essentially, the ones who lost the war were able to write the narrative, which we've said before, So a little bit more in depth. Did you know that there are monuments in over 31 states?
No, I didn't know it was that many.
And that also includes the District of Columbia. So did you know there were only 11 states that succeeded at the start of the Civil War?
No.
So you got 11 states, but you had 31 states in our, plus DC have monuments.
Oh, wow.
So when the war ended in 1865, monuments were built, but not most of them. And so the reason why I say that, I'll go into more detail about that. The memorials that had been built were to mourn the soldiers who died, and they were placed in cemeteries. So, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That a person could understand, better. So when the later statues were made, they were intended to glorify leaders of the Confederacy, like General Robert E. Lee, former president of the Confederacy Jefferson Davis, and General Thomas Stonewall Jackson. So you got most of these, so it went from being, let's mourn the soldiers, and that's a very admirable thing, to actually let's hold these generals, that were attempting to fight to keep slavery as heroes and people to be honored and revered. So the vast majority of the monuments and memorials were built between the 1890s and the 1950s. Those years match up exactly with the era of the Jim Crow segregation, which was something that we talked about. So please listen to that podcast.
So during that Jim Crow era was when they were erected?
Where majority of the statues and monuments were erected. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a coincidence.
Coincidence? I think not. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center's research, the biggest spike was between 1900 and the 1920s, and there are also they were placed in city squares and in front of state buildings. There was something else that I didn't write. Did I? No, I think I got it. So interesting enough, it was white women who was instrumental in the raising of funds to build these monuments. The United Daughters of the Confederacy, founded in 1890s, was possibly the most important and influential group. The group is responsible for the creating of the Mount Rushmore of the Confederacy, which is a gigantic stone carving of Davis, Lee, and Jackson in Stone Mountain, Georgia. The construction started in the 1910s and was completed in 1960.
It took 50 years?
50 years of fundraising, because that just wasn't all that was funded in just that year, but 50 years of fundraising to complete that project.
And you know what? If I could find a good picture of it, I'll put it for all of our watchers on YouTube. I'll put a picture of the monument up there.
Cool. Thanks. By then, the construction of new Confederate monuments had begun to taper off. So around that time, they the monuments weren't being built as much as they had been. But the backlash to the civil rights movement was spreading Confederate symbols in other ways.
That's it right there. I've actually seen it. I used to live in Atlanta. I've seen this.
Damn.
Yes, I'll definitely put a photo of it up on the stream for our watchers, on our viewers on YouTube.
So, in 1956, Georgia redesigned its state flag to include the Confederate battle flag. And in 1962, Southern Carolina placed the flag atop its Capitol building. In a 2016 report, the Southern Poverty Law Center said that the country's more than 700 monuments are part of roughly 15,000 symbols of the Confederacy in public spaces.
Wow.
Protesters and city officials have taken down statues in Baltimore and Durham, North Carolina, and many cities are calling for their elected officials to do the same. Two of Stonewall Jackson's great-great-grandsons penned an open letter to the mayor of Richmond, which is the former capital of the Confederacy, as well as the grandson's hometown. Regarding Jackson's statue there, they said, "We are writing today to ask for the removal of the statues, as well as the removal of Confederate statues from Monument Avenue." They wrote in the letter published on Slate, the article, there are overt symbols of racism and white supremacy, and the time is long overdue for them to depart from public display. So thinking that their grandsons even, are realizing this. Around 54 Confederate monuments have been removed, and more than 700 still stand as of July 2018.
Wow.
So, and so that's pretty much where I'm ending it at. However, as I was researching, I came across this thing called the Cult of the Lost Cause. And that has to do with kind of a way to reshape the Civil War and how making the South look not like they were dealing with slavery, but there was other things that they were trying to preserve in the fight. So the Cult of the Lost Cause has its roots in the Southern search for justification and the need to find a substitute for victory in the Civil War. In attempting to deal with defeat, Southerners created an image of the war as a great heroic epic. The major theme of the Cult of the Lost Cause was the clash of two civilizations, one inferior to the other. The North, invigorated by constant struggle with nature, had become a materialistic grasping for wealth and power. So they felt the North was, because they were having problems, that they needed to, they were about all materialistic and wanted power and just wealth and greed, right? The South had a more generous climate, which had led to a finer society based upon veracity and honor in man, chastity and fidelity in women. Like tragic heroes, Southerners had waged a noble but doomed struggle to preserve their superior civilizations. There was an element of chivalry in the way the South had fought, achieving noteworthy victories against staggering odds. This was the lost cause as the late 19th century saw it, and a whole generation of Southerners set about glorifying and celebrating it. So, I mean, you kind of get the understanding of it.
That's
it's kind of weird to just come across, because so there was an article which I'm trying to find also where it talked about how someone was looking into what was preventing people from what the laws and stuff or the cases where people didn't want the statues to be taken down. And so there was a particular, I know what it was. Okay. So there was a group that was trying to enact a law that prevented almost any type of statue from being taken down. And one of the things that they put in there, like in their, not a request, but something like that, in their, anyway, they put the lost cause was actually cited. So it's kind of interesting that, that there's a public, and I'll do more research into that. Maybe we can do a podcast about that, because that kind of just threw me. I was like, lost cause, which I've heard that, that the South, in order to not feel so terrible about their loss, they switched the, that's one reason why
they switched the narrative.
Yeah.
That's crazy,
and which kind of goes with what I've heard people almost sometimes say, like, I mean, think about, when you think about the South, people talk and they go, the women are ladies, the guys, that they work hard, or, just the South and the North are kind of considered different. I don't know.
Well, one of the things I want to do is dig deeper into, we were listening to Joe Rogan's podcast the other day on our way to Orange County, and Hotep Jesus was on there, and he was talking about how, and I'd heard this before, how we all didn't come from the Atlantic slave trade, and we all didn't get here by way of that, and there was evidence of archaeological findings in Ohio and the Grand Canyon and all that kind of stuff from Egypt and all that. So I definitely want to dig deep in one of these episodes and really dissect the truth about the slave trade and exactly what happened and what the numbers really were. But I'd always know, just from my own study, that Brazil got over 8 million Africans, and we only got only, I thought it was one or two.
I thought it was one or two, too.
But according to these scholars, they're saying it was under 400,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were also saying that even in countries like mine.
Well, let me kind of, that they did say it was only 400,000 or 300 and some thousand that landed here, that were brought. But that doesn't mean that they still didn't trade from the South America up to here.
And stuff like that. Right, exactly.
Because that 8, 10, 12 or something.
I know 8 million went just to Brazil, I heard.
Okay, so there's got to be more.
Cuba. Yeah. It got, a lot of, all the islands.
So
got
I would
slaves.
imagine
the Bahamas got slaves. Yeah,
they traded.
It was spread, Belize got slaves. All across the whole Western Hemisphere. So if Brazil had 8 or whatever, I'm sure there was other, and we had 500,000 or 400,000, whatever. But don't forget Haiti. Bunch of slaves, like Dominica. We can go on and on and on. So when you think about it, Cuba has 11 million people. How many of them are Africans?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It could be 1 million or 2 there. So if you just added that to Brazil, that's 10. And if it was 12 total, think about it.
Yeah.
And we had 500,000 almost, and then you spread around the other islands, that's another half or whatever. But what I'm basically coming down to is that, the atrocities that took place in the American history of the colonization, and to me, it's just brazen and bold that they would even still have these monuments erected all over the place.
Correct.
As you were talking, I was looking up this thing about the one in Stone Mountain, Georgia, which I used to live in Atlanta, and my cousin, my uncle, he had a house in Stone Mountain.
Okay.
So we weren't far at all from that. So we've seen that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but coming up, when I was younger in high school, I really didn't know what it meant because I wasn't really deep in the history back then as I am now. But I remember seeing it, and they were even talking about will this monument stay on Stone Mountain?
Yeah.
And I personally think, my opinion for all our listeners, I think that all that stuff should be taken down. Like I said earlier, you wouldn't go to any, country in Germany and have any Hitler or Stalin or whoever else. You're not going to have monuments of them anywhere.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree that one.
And if you go to South America, which I just Googled, you probably won't even find any Spanish monuments of Columbus and all that, of them celebrating that. I was just looking it up, and I saw the date when Chile gained its independence from Spain.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm trying to say? Because they colonized all that stuff, man, and killed committed genocide and everything. So, again, I'm sure you ain't rolling around Spain and I mean Chile, and there's folks in there comfortably just rolling by monuments of Columbus.
Yeah, that's true.
But yet, we seem to be okay with this thing. All these monuments up and stuff like that, even if it's from a negative time, a negative source, and a bad time in history that needs to be just
I think it's always been fought a long time.
Yeah, they've been talking about it.
But if you're saying we as there's a clear divided line on who's for it and who's against it.
Right. But to me, there isn't enough conversation or protest within the black community about these monuments, and it should be from the white community as well. We all should.
I do think that
should not agree with it. I don't hear a lot about it. I just heard about it the other day on an interview, but I don't hear about it enough.
Okay.
So I'm glad we're bringing it up. I'm not saying it's not talked about, and we don't.
In my research, there's a lot. Here I could add to this, removal of monuments and memorials. The national one, after receiving complaints, Forest Road was renamed Cassidy Road in honor of Lieutenant General Robert T. Cassidy, from former post commander.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Birmingham, Alabama. That one is so in August 2017, William A. Bell, the mayor of Birmingham, draped a Confederate memorial with plastic and surrounded it with plywood. So he covered it up. This country should in no way tolerate the hate that the KKK, neo-Nazis, fascists, and other hate groups spew, said Bell. Right. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall immediately sued Bell and the city for violating a new, which in 2017, state law that prohibits the relocation, removal, alteration, or other disturbance of any monument on public property that has been in place for 40 years or more. On January 14, 2019, a circuit court found the law to be an unconstitutional restriction of free speech.
Mm-hmm. So, and see, what I want to add is like, you know, there's been all this talk of reparations and this, and America making amends and apologizing. How is America supposed to truly make amends and apologize for these transgressions if they're going to just leave all these monuments erect? You know what I mean?
I agree.
To me, that's a part of it.
Yeah, that
you know what I mean? All
like
that stuff has to
across
come
the
down.
board has to be taken down and removed and done like that. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm totally in agreement with that. I was just trying to definitely defend it. There are monuments that where the states or whatever, the states haven't gotten involved, and a city wants to remove it. They've been able to, but again, only 54 out of 700. So the process is moving pretty slow. You know, or what I should add is when you have people trying to fight it on the other end and you know, suing whoever for the fact that they covered it or plan on removing it, and then they get a case so that it could, you know, to injunction to stop it, blah blah blah. That or the backhanded stuff that's going on is that they're making laws to prevent monuments from being taken down, almost with the intent that, oh, we've got to save these, you know, before, because they almost like they knew it was coming, or they, you know, so they put some laws out going, actually probably retrospect, you know, they saw people wanting the statues to be removed, so then they're like, oh wait, let's create a law that says that you can't remove certain ones if they fall in these particular statements, which, so it's 2000, but up until 1960, so 1965 was when civil rights was, you know, was not ended, but when the Civil Rights Act was and was put in place. So if up until that point people could do, you know, build those statues, it's easy enough right now. 60, so 70. Because I'm looking at my age. Anything from this point, and it's over 40, they've got it. You know, they got it on lock where they can say, oh no, this thing's, you know, a historic monument. Civil rights doesn't even, you know what you know? Yeah. So it's very backhanded with, it's very sneaky how people are trying to keep these statues in place. So anyway, I'm repeating myself.
It's interesting. Anyway, guys, that's our show today about the monuments and stuff. You guys could definitely do your research and get involved with any community organizations that's doing any petitions to bring these things down or anything of the sort. I know I'm going to try to. I don't think we have a lot in California, though, do we?
Yeah, there is.
We have a few,
so,
but it's not.
Confederate Corners, which was formerly known as Springtown, was renamed was called, after some Southerners settled there, it became Confederate Corners. And then in 2018, it changed back to Springtown. In Long Beach, Robert E. Lee, which, what does Robert E. Lee got to do with California? Anyway, elementary school was renamed Olivia Herrera Elementary School on August 1st, 2016.
So they changed it already here.
Yeah. These are the changes that happened. So my point is, you know, you would think that liberal, or at least the idea is that California is so liberal, but there's stuff that happened here or brought, you know.
But it was already changed. The ones that were brought.
The ones only the ones, I mean, again, like
there's some that aren't changed.
There's probably some that aren't, but
at least
California
those were changed, though.
Yeah, correct. These have all been changed. So, like a Confederate monument, Hollywood Forever Cemetery. So it was covered with a tarp and whisked away in the middle of the night after activists called for its removal and spray painted the word "no" on its back. So after they did that,
California is one of those states too. So that's cool.
Correct. So
that's interesting.
As you said, and we've also kind of talked about it, is if you're, you know, there's definitely groups out there. So a lot of stuff is not put in the news. Sometimes things aren't put in, front page or whatever. So you kind of have to look for things on your own. And, if you're passionate about that, don't just sit back, because there might be something in your city, in your state, that you can actually work to get removed. So,
got you. That's cool. All right, guys. So we're gonna go over today in history for you guys, September 18th. So in 1709, the creator of the first dictionary of the English language, Samuel Johnson, was born in England. That's in 1709, September 18th. Another one is in 1759. The French formally surrendered Quebec to the British. Interesting. So French had Canada first, huh? I'm sure I knew that, but you've
heard of French Canadians?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I'm sure I knew that, but it's interesting hearing it again.
Yeah.
And when you get specifics, I think it rings a different kind of bell. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So the French surrendered Quebec to the British on this day in 1759. Wow. So and what's funny about this kind of stuff? This was when slavery was going on.
Yeah.
All these trades were happening. It's crazy. In 1769, 10 years later, it was reported by the Boston Gazette that the first piano had been built in North America. The instrument was named the spinet and was made by John Harris. And then, here it is. We were just talking about this. In 1810 of this day, Chile declared its independence from Spain, which, I said, I just came from Spain 10 days ago. Those who know, we talked about it last week. And next week will be about the history of Spain. But, so in 1810, today, September 18th, Chile declared its independence from Spain. It's interesting. They were like, I'm done. And again, slavery was still going on, if you think about that.
Yeah.
So, so the Spanish were still in South America doing their thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Chile was like, get up out of here. We want our independence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There. And they probably sailed their asses back to Spain. You know what I mean?
Or just crossed over to the territories that they had already in.
That hadn't gained the independence yet. Interesting. Anyway, guys, that's our show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube on ICT Group Digital. Once again, I'm Shakur Smith. Thank you guys every week for tuning in. Thanks for all our listeners on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, cell phone apps. Keep listening. And we will see you guys next Wednesday, where we're going to talk about the history of Spain. Peace.
Peace out.
Thanks for checking in.
Yep.